Well, I was gone last week, or I was here last week. I was gone the week before that, and I just want to say thank you for allowing me to take some time to be away and to be renewed and just to experience God's presence in my life. We're continuing the series of the 10 Commandments, and we're in the seventh commandment. But before we do, I'm going to pause and just say a word of prayer for us before we jump into today's word, all right? God, I am so thankful for your presence. And I pause right now as we begin. God, I want to humble my mind and my heart before you, before these who have gathered in person and online. God, I recognize there are people here that are participating and engaged in this gathering from all different walks and backgrounds. Some have been followers of you for many, many years, and some are just starting, and maybe even there's some who are checking it all out. But God, I pray that wherever we might be on that wide range of experiences and backgrounds, God, I don't believe that any of us are here on accident. And I pray, God, that we would humble our hearts and our minds to hear from you, not from me, to hear from you. So move me out of the way, and may your Holy Spirit come and speak to all of us. I pray this in your name. Amen. So last week, Gwen talked about murder. She talked about the sixth commandment, you must not murder. Gwen talked about how God says we are all created in the image of him. And God's image is on every single person, right? And when we dismiss the worth of another person, we are committing murder with our hearts. With our hearts. The heart is how Jesus takes and reveals to us how to actually live the commandments out. It's one thing to say each of the commandments. It's one thing to say, love your neighbor, but what does that actually mean? How do I love my neighbor? How do I love other people that I live in community with that are all around me? The way we care for our family even, right? The way we care for our elderly neighbors, as Mike talked about it a couple of weeks ago. And then Gwen talked about how Jesus reveals that the roots of murder grow from the seed of hate. The roots of murder grow from the seed of hate. Jesus tells us that how we think directly impacts how we respond to God's desire for our lives. How we think, our thought processes, our thought lives directly impact how we respond to God. And remember, Jesus boiled down all of the commandments to this: love God with your whole being, and love your neighbor as, what's it say? Yourself. So we are in the love your neighbor portion of the 10 Commandments, right? There are two parts. Love God with everything in you is the first 5 or first 4, and then the love your neighbor as yourself is the next 6. And this week we're looking at the 7th commandment, and it's another one of those short verses. It gets right to the point. In Exodus chapter 20, verse 14, it says, you must not commit adultery. Now, this concept of faithfulness, it's pretty universally accepted that unfaithfulness and infidelity or cheating on someone you are in a committed relationship with, well, it's frowned upon universally. That's even the case prior to marriage. If you've got a girlfriend or boyfriend and you've been dating or you have decided to make it exclusive, I don't know if we even use that terminology anymore, right? But remember when it used to be exclusive? Even for those outside of any kind of faith experience, They agree that it's not a good idea to be unfaithful. In fact, there's one of my favorite shows is this show called Frasier. It's from the back in the 1990s, in the old days. And it's a really interesting show about this radio psychologist, and man, he thinks he's pretty good stuff, but he's always getting himself in trouble. In fact, there's this one episode where Frasier ends up on 3 different nights. He has 3 different dates, one each night, and he thinks he's pretty big stuff, right? He's got 3 different dates. Well, somehow he always seems to sabotage his dates. And in this particular case, it was no different. And by the time they got to the 3rd date, she had figured out he had 2 other dates. And here was the kicker. She found out that he did the same thing with the 2 other dates that he was trying to do with her. The same house, the same room, the same music in the background. He even was making the same dinner. And she figured it out, and she was ticked off at him for doing that. The reality is she figured out that he was manipulating the situation. And so she was angry with him. Now, while this is comedy, and Frasier comes to realize what a moron he was for trying to do that, right? Something I have noticed in culture and society is that we don't really know what to do with these feelings. In one sense, we laugh and we joke because the whole point is before you commit to someone, you have to figure out the person, if that person you are trying to be with, if you have something in common with them, if you can do life with them. So you try to find ways to get to know people. But have you ever noticed that sometimes we seem to glorify this almost weird immaturity in grown adults when it comes to the way we approach faithful, committed relationships? Anybody else know what I'm talking about? Like a weird immaturity. Now, today I do believe that the casual attitude toward hurting others, particularly in the area of shared sexual experiences, is being wrestled with like never before. I think there is a very real longing to have whole and healthy, committed, romantic relationships. And while the majority in our society may not always view the answer as being marriage, I would say that most people who want to know and be known romantically are looking for commitment of some sort. Would you agree? Most people are looking for commitment of some sort. Sure, there are exceptions, but I think with the rise of like the internet and apps and that are supposed to be helping date people, did you know there's a website, it's been around now for a while, called eHarmony. What's the whole point of eHarmony? It's to match you up with someone and do all the legwork to make sure that you find the right person that you have so much in common with that you have harmony with, right? eHarmony, right? There are websites, there are apps, there's whole programs that are geared toward helping people do all this work. And we all know that a core part of a romantic relationship has to do with shared, intimate, sexual expressions between 2 people. And I'll tell you something, sexual intimacy is so powerful. So powerful. Over the years, I have had countless counseling moments with people who are unmarried, and I can always figure out, we can always peel back the onion to find where they have been sexually intimate with each other. And when they go through the breakup, the pain of that breakup is so much harder. You know why? Because sexual intimacy is so powerful. So powerful. It's so powerful that we go to great lengths to control it. You see, there's something about this sexual intimacy that at the root of its purpose, what it was created for, what God gave us the gift of it for. Do you know what? I mean, there's multiple benefits to it. But the ultimate goal, I think we could all agree on, that its purpose ultimately, what do you think it is? It is for creation. Creating life. There is something so beautiful about the sexual expression between two people, and why wouldn't it be? Right? If the main goal and outcome, the ultimate purpose of it, one of the ultimate purposes, and this is Health Class 101, is to create life. It's so powerful that we go to great lengths even to be able to enjoy sex without setting the creation process in motion, if we can help it. But even after we have figured out ways to manipulate the creation process, the ripple effects of sexual encounters in our lives continue to have powerful impact. Listen. Our sexual encounters impact us physically, emotionally, mentally. And because it impacts our relationships with other humans, it impacts our relationship with God, which means it impacts us spiritually. We live in a culture that is broken, and we live in a hurting world that is so desperate for healing, to feel accepted, to feel in control and empowered, to feel safe and secure. There is a deep longing in all of us to feel whole. And unfortunately, in the search and in this drive to meet these kinds of needs in our lives, we want the healing power of sex without embracing the full responsibility that comes with having the gift of this power. Can I say that again? I don't know if anybody's awake or not. We're talking about sex, so I'm imagining you are, right? We want the healing power of sex without embracing the full responsibility that comes with the gift of this power. Too many do. The truth of the matter is, when it comes to romantic love, and if we choose and desire to be connected with another person like that, on that level that involves sexual experiences, listen, the truth is God has given us a way to have the joy, beauty, and freedom of sexual expression that is life-giving instead of soul-crushing. And it is found within the sacred boundaries of marriage. From the beginning, God has always intended that the committed romantic relationship between a man and woman be holy. Because the very creation of both man and woman are meant to reflect the image of God Himself. Listen to what it says in Genesis chapter 1, verses 27 through 28. It says, "So God created human beings in His own image. In the image of God, He created them. Male and female, He created them." So God created human beings in His own, what's it say? What's it say? There we are. In the image of God, He created them. Male and female, He created them. Then God blessed them and said, here it is, "Be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth and govern it. Reign over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, and all the animals that scurry along the ground." Do you see what God does here? From the beginning, God has created male and female to be a team. They are supposed to care for all of creation together. They are supposed to be in each other's corners. And let me tell you something. There is nobody in Aaron Horton's corner like Becky Horton. We don't always agree on everything. Sometimes, man, she makes me so stinking mad. And sometimes she just gets a little mad at me. But at the end of the day, at the end of the day, we both make an effort to remind each other that we are for each other, that we are in this together. And let me tell you, there have been times in our lives where we literally have thought, well, babe, right now, it's just you, me, and Jesus. But this is what God intended for humankind. Within the sacred beauty of a committed relationship, God tells them to be fruitful and multiply. But then comes the fall, the rebellion that humans have against God's desire for their lives. The story of Adam and Eve and the apple and the serpent, right? There's a tree that God warns them against eating the fruit from it. And there's this serpent who whispers, will you really die? Or is God hiding something from you? Does God just want you to suffer? To not have any fun? The serpent whispers, you can become like God and decide for yourself everything you want. These are my words, but this is what really happens here between Satan and God's creation of humans. He whispers, nothing will be off limits to your selfish rule. And they become convinced that what God wants for them isn't good enough. They become convinced that what God wants for them isn't good enough. They do not trust the gift God has given them is enough to satisfy their deepest longings. Adam and Eve, they don't see the perimeters God has given them as protecting them. They see them as holding them back. Does that sound familiar? And now humans must live with the struggle of longing for what was and the curse of what they had done to themselves. The struggle between man and woman, this idea that somehow man was more important than the woman, is not what Genesis 1:27 and 28 says. It's not until Genesis 3, which is a result of the curse of sin, that this struggle between man and woman enters the human story. Look that up sometime. Genesis chapter 3. You'll hear what happens when they finally come to deal with the results of their sin against God. And now struggle, pain, and suffering becomes part of the human condition. It was never supposed to be that way. What we see here as we look to Exodus and the story of the people of God and God giving them the 10 Commandments. God knows what is best for that which is his creation. The whole first 4 commandments are about his expectation that they would be faithful to him, right? That they would love him with their whole being. So God feels strongly about this idea of faithfulness and fidelity, commitment and covenant. See, when the subject matter of adultery is addressed in the Old Testament, it is sometimes referred to the relationship between the people of Israel and God. When the Israelites turn to other gods, when the Israelites would forget their identity, it is oftentimes put in terms of being unfaithful to God. And even when they are unfaithful with their love for God, God remains faithful to them. God never goes back on his covenant, his commitment. So, it should be no surprise to see that God commands that same kind of faithfulness within the boundaries of marriage. Because the loving, romantic, sexual relationship between a man and a woman reflects back on God himself. I'm going to say that again. Because the loving, romantic, sexual relationship between a man and a woman reflects back on God himself. This is why adultery is so destructive. Adam Hamilton writes, the book we've been going through as we begin going along here, it says, in the 10 Commandments, the prohibition against adultery follows just after the prohibition against murder, which points to the severity of the transgression against one's neighbor. It is also likely true that the inclusion of this command indicates infidelity was a common occurrence among the ancient Israelites, just as it was among the ancient Egyptians and other ancient people. But something interesting happens here, though. See, God gives them this commandment against adultery. But what they end up doing with this commandment is they begin to take it and they begin to build on it, and they begin to revert back to and stay within the curse. The curse where this idea that man rules over the woman, or where the man is more important than the woman. They continue to live with that mindset. And so they end up applying it from a male-dominated patriarchal society. Listen to what it says in the law of Moses, created to respond to this commandment. This is Leviticus chapter 20, verse 10. It says, if a man commits adultery with his neighbor's wife, both the man and the woman who have committed adultery must be put to death. Severe. Listen to Deuteronomy 22:22. It says, if a man is discovered committing adultery, both he and the woman must die. In this way, you will purge Israel of such evil. Now, Hamilton writes about this. He says, adultery was framed as a sin committed against a married man by his wife and another man. By contrast, a man did not commit adultery against the wife when he slept with another woman. See, in that male-dominated polygamous society, it was not uncommon for men to have multiple wives or concubines. A married man may even sleep with an unmarried woman, and it would not necessarily be considered adultery. See, adultery was technically a violation of a husband's rights that took place when another man slept with his wife. That's what Hamilton's research has found about that particular culture and society. So I'm going to go back to the statement I said before. That isn't what God intended. We see it in the story of the great hero of the Bible, a guy by the name of King David, who ends up using his power to take another man's wife, forces her to have sex with him, finds out she's pregnant, then tries to cover it up with having that man, the husband, murdered. And let me tell you something. I don't care how mature in your faith you may think you are. If you think for 1 second you couldn't make a mess of things like this, then you're not quite as mature as you think. See, this was the great king who had such a relationship with God that God himself said he was a man after his own heart. But do you know where it all started to go downhill? 2 Samuel chapter 11, verse 2 through 3. Listen to the story, how it begins with King David. Late one afternoon, after his midday rest, David got out of bed and was walking on the roof of the palace. As he looked out over the city, he noticed a woman of unusual beauty taking a bath. He sent someone to find out who she was, and he was told, she is Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam and the wife of Uriah the Hittite. Right here at the beginning of this story, we see where it begins. It's like a snowball, right? Or even better, an avalanche. He wakes up from his nap, paces back and forth and on the rooftop, and he sees her. He sees her. We were in San Francisco about a month ago, Becky and I, and her cousin lives there, and she has one of these apartments that has a rooftop terrace. And so we were able to walk up onto the roof. And in San Francisco, the way they build their buildings, they're kind of in different heights, and you can see out over the whole city. You can see on other people's roofs, and it would be very easy to look out and see what other people are doing without them even knowing. But man, the vantage, what a view it was of the bay and of the town and of the city. And I can only imagine there is David standing up there, looking out, and he sees her. What happens is what he does next. See, here's David. And he could have easily saw her and then just moved on. But he doesn't. Instead, he lets his mind linger. He lets his mind begin to explore the what ifs, right? What if I could just get to know her? What if, and it's clear that his mind goes all the way with her. You see, this is the kind of moment that Jesus gets at when he deals with this commandment in Matthew chapter 5. In the Sermon on the Mount, he says, "You have heard the commandment that says, 'You must not commit adultery.' But I say anyone who even looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery with her in his heart. So if your eye, even your good eye, causes you to lust, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your hand, even your strong hand, causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell." Man, I want to jump into this story with King David, and I want to yell at him, "Stop!" right there, as he looks out and he sees her. And from that moment that he sees her, I wish I could be there and be like, "Hey, don't go there, man. Don't go there, stop." In fact, I wish I could tell him to back up. To take those thoughts that he's having in that instant and throw them away. See, when Jesus talks about this whole thing about gouging your eye out or cutting off your strong hand, he's making a point that what this kind of reckless thought life can lead to will destroy you. And it can destroy your life. It can destroy the lives of other people. And wouldn't it, listen to this, wouldn't it be better to sacrifice a little for boundaries than to bring pain and suffering to yourself and others? I'm going to say that one more time. This is what Jesus is getting at. Wouldn't it be better to sacrifice a little for boundaries than to bring pain and suffering to yourself and others? Which is exactly what David didn't do. In fact, from that point on, even though David repented, the pain and suffering as a result of the consequences of his actions rippled down through the rest of his reign in life. All because he allowed his mind to go there. He did not see her in the light of being made in the image of God. Can you imagine if that would have happened? If he had seen her and he'd stopped for a second and said, "How do I see her through God's eyes?" I guarantee you, God would have dealt with him in that moment. But instead, he saw her. He saw her as something for him to have and to take. In that moment, David allowed the ugliness of sin to cover up the beauty of God's creation in his mind. Because if he had seen her in the beauty of God's creation, he would have looked away out of respect for her. I'm going to say that one more time. If he had seen her in the beauty of God's creation, he would have looked away out of respect for her. And his respect for her would have been a boundary keeping him from crossing it and causing so much suffering. It really does go back to what Gwen talked about last week. It is the dehumanization of another person. In this case, Jesus says to lust, to objectify another person as a possession for our pleasure, even in our minds, is to commit adultery. Whether we are married or not, we are sinning against our neighbor. I'm going to say that again because I believe this right now. We need to hear this today. We need to wake up to this today. Every single person of every single age, of every single season of life. What Jesus is talking about here in Matthew 5, he says, and it is to lust, to objectify another person as a possession of our pleasure, even in our mind, is committing adultery. Whether we are married or not, we are sinning against our neighbor. And to sin against our neighbor is to sin against God. In today's world, with so much at our fingertips and ways to do things in secret, so we think. And I know I'm running short on time today. This is a big subject. We could have stretched it out for multiple weeks. We really do need to deal with pornography. We really need to deal with emotional affairs. We really need to talk about how you can have a healthy and whole life even as a single person. We really need to deal with the fact that there is hope and redemption. We really need to deal with the fact that healing and help is available. And some of you are trapped. You feel like the sexual addiction has a strong hold on your life and you don't know what to do with it. Some of you have bought into all the distractions and voices in our culture and society that tell you it's okay to live in your sin. Even if it hurts other people, your happiness is all that matters. And I want to encourage you that if you are struggling with sexual addiction, please seek help of a professional. And also check out our Celebrate Recovery ministry every Friday night. Some of you may be playing with fire by getting too close to someone of the opposite sex or the same sex. Make a commitment today to stop it before it destroys you and those you love. I want to share some practical steps here too. As we begin to wrap up, would you stand? I want to leave you with this as we prepare to move into a time of reflection. These are practices that I've had in my own life, but Adam Hamilton put them into a way to remember them. The 4 R's, he describes them. Here they are. They'll be on the screen. Number 1, remember who you are. I think of the fact that I am a husband to Becky. I'm a father to Landon and Lily. I'm the son of Henry and Judy. I'm the pastor at Pineville Church. But above all, I'm a follower of Jesus. Remember who you are. 2, recognize the consequences of the actions. When those moments pop into your mind, when you see that person at work or the temptation crosses your thought life, look ahead. Recognize what the consequences, the ripple effect that will have on your life, on your family, on your witness. 3rd R, rededicate yourself to God or seek forgiveness for the very first time. Seek Him. 4th R, reveal your struggle to a trusted friend. Let me tell you, you get this stuff out in the open, and it's amazing what the light will do to it. that stronghold that it has over your life, that guilt and that shame that it continues to beat you down with, you get it into the light, you share that burden with someone else, and you will find help. You will find the door to go through, the path to take. For ours, I encourage you, we can get this to you at some point in the next couple of days if you need the reminder of them. There is help. We do not have to live in acceptance of this sin in our lives. Let's pray together. God, this is another difficult subject. It's a subject, it's an issue that has permeated our world and culture. There are many who walk around with scars of someone's unfaithfulness. There are some of us who have been in a marriage and our hearts have been broken and the deep pain exists because of what someone has done. Some of us are in the middle of maybe dealing with some of these sins. Maybe even this past week, the temptations have entered into their minds. They haven't been sure what to do with it. And the enemy whispers in their ears, just like he did with those first humans. Your happiness is what's most important. Wouldn't you be better off if you did this? Who cares what anybody else thinks? But God, I pray right now that you will help them, that you will help us, that you will give us the ability to remember who we are, that we would recognize the consequences of our actions, that we would rededicate our lives to you, and that we would share the burden with a trusted friend that you have put in our lives. Lord, we need you. We pray this in your name. Amen.